Hello, my name is Annette DeLu, and you are listening to The Heart of You. In today's episode, we're going to talk about what it means to love yourself. Have you ever really asked yourself what that truly means to have self-love? If you haven't, then now is the time to start. It always used to drive me crazy whenever somebody would say, "Oh, you just need to love yourself," because I never knew what that meant. And this is something that I talked about in the first episode of this season about codependency. And there is a small part of that episode where I talk about self-love and what it means to have self-love and going into the shadow work and the work on your belief systems and the negative self-talk. After I re-listened to that episode while I was editing it, I realized that the self-love portion of that episode really needed its own episode because all of those things that I talked about in the codependency episode absolutely apply to your own self-love. We're going to dive a little bit deeper into all of those tools and all of those ways in which you can start loving yourself more right now. You might look on Instagram and see the hashtag self-love absolutely everywhere. I myself use it. You might see things like people going to spas or getting manicures and pedicures or getting their hair done or buying a nice new pair of shoes or whatever it happens to be. And those are all really wonderful things that could make you temporarily happy and therefore be in that loving space. But that's the key. Those are just temporary fixes. And actually, I sort of throw all of those things in the category of self-care. And that is exactly what it is. You're taking a moment out of your day to go to the gym, to go get your hair done, to whatever it is that you need to do for yourself. That is what you were taking time out to do, and that is self-care. Self-love is completely different. It's not about necessarily doing things for yourself, taking time out of your day. It is so much more. The first and most important self-love behavior is drawing healthy boundaries. Now, we all have issues with boundaries to a certain extent, and we have been working on this throughout the course of our lifetimes. And it just depends on where you are in that process. Are you able to draw healthy boundaries, first of all? Meaning that if there is some sort of behavior that's happening within a dynamic, and it's a behavior that you prefer not to have in your energy, in your energetic field, do you draw that boundary and say, okay, you know what? I'm not going to spend time with this person while they are in this particular energy. Do you keep that boundary? Do you allow that boundary to be crossed? Do you give in after a period of time of somebody coercing you or asking you, "Oh, hey, come on, I really want to spend time with you," even though you know that in this particular moment in time, it's not the best thing for you? Really taking a look at your boundaries and assessing whether or not those boundaries are strong enough and also if they're flexible enough. Because not all boundaries have to be completely firm. They can have a little bit of wiggle room depending on what happens to be going on. But it is about being in touch with your intuition and your inner self enough to know when it is the right time to engage with somebody or engage in a situation and when it's time to withdraw your energy. A really simple and good example of this would be if you're having a romantic relationship with somebody and you find that you are, let's say, texting them much more often than they text you. And you'll text them and they'll wait days before responding to you or weeks before responding to you. And you continually either text them asking them why they're not texting you, or you get angry with them and say, "Hey, there's no reason why you shouldn't be texting me. I know you're not that busy," or "I know I'm not a priority in your life. This starts diving into something we'll talk about a little later on in this episode, which is creating stories. So this is creating stories as to why the person isn't texting you back, why they're not engaging. And ultimately, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter why they're not engaging. The biggest question is this behavior okay for me? Am I okay with this person not responding over the course of a few days? And maybe if you're in a relationship, having somebody not respond over a few weeks, then maybe that's not okay with you. And so then at that point, it is about drawing that boundary of, okay, maybe I need to not spend as much energy paying attention to this person or being engaged with this person. And it's not about playing games. It is simply about either giving energy to a certain situation or retracting your energy from a certain situation. If you contact the person and say, hey, I'd really prefer that we are in more constant contact, and that person, as we were talking about in the codependency episode, and that person isn't able to give you that, then you can make the choice of either leaving the relationship, or you can make the choice of, okay, maybe I can modify what I need. And what is it that I need and why? Because if you are looking for that constant validation that this person is interested, so that's what the text messages represent to you, then you're not getting that love from yourself. You're not getting that attention from yourself. You're getting it from an outside source, which again points back to that codependency. So in self-love, it is about really understanding what it is you truly want out of a situation and the reason and the energy behind why you're texting the person. Is it just because you want to brighten their day? Is it just because you want to find out how they're doing, or you want to tell them a story, some funny story that happened to you that day? If they're any of those things, it doesn't require an instant response. So if you are looking to a particular situation to elicit a certain reaction, that is not loving yourself. That is, in fact, giving your power away and allowing somebody else to hold your self-worth in their hands. One of the reasons why I did think this was an important episode to do very shortly after the codependency episode is because there is a lot of overlap here. How many times have you looked at your calendar and just got a glimpse of what your day looks like and realized how anxiety filled it makes you because you have so much to do and so many things to go to, and am I going to really fit it all in? That is not self-love, because self-love looks like giving yourself room to breathe if you need that room to breathe. If somebody is asking you to commit to something and you say yes, 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 yes all the time, and it is draining your energy, it is making you tired, it is making you resentful of having to do all of these things, and all you want to do is curl up on the couch with a cup of tea, then that's not loving yourself. What can you do instead? Well, you can start saying no a whole lot. You can start assessing what is right for you. And if that means that you need to postpone something, go ahead, postpone it. Make sure that it happens a few weeks into the future if that's the time that you need. Make sure that maybe you don't have anything more than 3 or 4 things on your calendar for a particular day. Whatever your boundary happens to be in regards to how much personal time you need, everybody has a different gauge or a different need in terms of what they require for their own self-love. For me, I need a whole lot of downtime. If my day is busy from the second I wake up until the second I go to bed, that to me is a really bad day. Even if I'm accomplishing really, really amazing things, it doesn't matter because my energy hasn't had the time to recuperate. I haven't really had the time to check in with my intuition, to make sure that everything is going in the right direction. I haven't had a chance to check in with myself. It's really going to depend on who you are and how you operate. Take a look at your calendar after you're done listening to this episode and really assess the items on your calendar. Are they things that you really, truly want to do? Does it give you enough time in your day to go to the gym or to do your shadow work or to check in with your intuition? Because if it doesn't, it's time to start building that time in right now. This is a good segue to love languages. Now, eventually, I might do an episode on love languages. It is a pretty common thing at this point, and a lot of people know the book, The Love Languages. And it's a really beautiful way to really assess how you give and receive love. As I mentioned in the previous episode, my top love language for receiving is quality time. So if I turn that love language back on myself, how do I feel the most whole and the most happy? Is when I'm spending quality time with myself. So find out what your love language is and how you receive love, and then start doing that one thing for yourself. And then likewise for the love language you have for giving love, the thing that you absolutely adore in terms of giving love. It just lights you up inside and makes you feel really good. Start doing that. So if it happens to be gift giving, give a random gift to a friend who wasn't expecting it, or give a gift to yourself. Or if it's acts of service, go and volunteer somewhere, a place that you really believe in and are really passionate about the cause. All of these things can really contribute to your own self-love. A really, really big portion of self-love has to do with introspection. And so we're going to cover a lot of different ways in which you can go within and start cultivating that self-love. The first part is sort of the easiest to identify, but it is often the hardest to change, which is your own self-talk. How often are you speaking to yourself in your own mind and saying words of love? Or are they words of hatred? Would you say these things to a friend that you really, really love? Write down some of the thoughts you have and some of the feelings or phrases you have that go on in your head about yourself. When you walk by a mirror, do you look at yourself with joy and with love? Or do you hone in on the one flaw that you always hate about your face or your body? Are you constantly saying, oh, I should have done this, or God, I was so dumb, I can't believe I did that, and oh gosh, are you constantly saying those things? Because if so, it's time to start changing that script. The way that you can start doing this is, like I said, write those things down as the thoughts come to you. And I want you to stop and think to yourself, cancel and clear that thought from my energetic field. And then I want you to replace that thought with something else that is positive. So if you are looking in the mirror and you don't like a particular part of your body, instead of looking in the mirror and honing in on the negative, I want you to look in the mirror and look at your positive attributes, all of the things that you love about yourself. And if you're having a hard time finding out what those are, then you simply just call in the willingness. Say to your angels and your guides, I'm calling in the willingness to love myself and to find beautiful things about my body and about my person. And watch as the script in your head starts shifting and changing. Yes, this takes quite a long time, because if you think about it, however old you are, if you have never done this before, you are essentially working with however many years you've been alive and conscious, that many years of negative self-talk and of not loving yourself. So give yourself a little bit of a break, have some patience, and start doing it today. That's something you can start doing right now, because all of the rest of the deep diving that we're going to do coming up shortly, that can be a little bit more work. It can be a little bit harder, but it's also going to really help with your dialogue, with your inner dialogue. So a companion to this changing your inner dialogue will be your spiritual practice. Now, spiritual practice can be all kinds of things. People have a tendency to think that spiritual practice means that you're sitting on a cushion meditating, and that's just not the case. Of course, if you love sitting on a cushion and meditating, go do it. It's amazing. I highly recommend it. If you just want to practice mindfulness techniques, that is also a spiritual practice. But if you have certain things that you like to do that don't involve full-on meditations, then go ahead and do it. If your spiritual practice means that you're sitting out in your garden and you're tending to your plants. That could be your spiritual practice. If you really love to run or cycle or whatever it is that you love to do, that could be your spiritual practice. So make sure you make time for that every single day. And people talk about, yes, you should have a spiritual practice. Yes, you should meditate or practice mindfulness all the time. But sometimes they don't really say why and what happens when you do. Because it's not just about clearing your thoughts. It's not just about trying to calm the mind. It is about listening. It is about getting those messages from your intuition, from your angels and guides, and from the universe. And then it's about doing the work. Don't be surprised if once you start your spiritual practice, that the universe is going to start giving you scenarios and situations in your life that maybe you haven't dealt with in a really long time. And maybe you're saying to yourself, wait, why is this popping up again? Why is this coming up? It's simply because it means that you are now ready to deal with that particular trigger or that particular situation once and for all and let it go. If you are having a conversation or if you're in a situation where you're being triggered into some sort of lower or negative emotion, when you look back on how you used to respond, so maybe you used to respond or maybe you still are responding from your hurt. Maybe you get defensive. Maybe you get angry. Maybe you end up withdrawing and crying and not wanting to speak to the person and then ghosting them. And this last one is probably the most insidious, which is creating those stories in your head without even having a conversation with the other person. So you've already decided in your mind that they're thinking or feeling this particular thing. Oh, well, they clearly don't care about me. They clearly don't love me because of this. Or I clearly don't mean anything to them because of their behavior or because of something they said. It is an assumption and creating stories that actually ends up leading you towards more suffering that is completely unnecessary, because half the stories you tell yourself about what the other person is thinking or feeling, I would say more than half, are completely untrue. But what can you do instead? Well, you can simply understand that the other person is operating from their wounding, and not knowing what exactly they are dealing with internally. You can then decide that you're not going to take it personally. You can decide that that trigger that just happened has nothing to do with the other person, but it has to do with you. So let's say somebody says something to you and it really triggers an emotion of sadness or feeling not worthy. It's not about going back and lashing out at that other person. It's about looking within and saying, oh, okay, so I'm feeling really unworthy and I'm feeling really sad about that. Where is that coming from? And why am I feeling that based on what this person said? And that's where going inward can really just work miracles on your relationships. Because then you can look at the other person and say, okay, cool, they're operating out of their wounding, but I am not anymore. I have now discovered why I am reacting the way that I am in the face of this particular situation. And now I can choose to respond differently. Now, this does not mean that you ignore those emotions that you are having. It means that you face them head on. You look at them and you say hi to them. And this is part of what shadow work is. I really love to take my clients through this portion of their emotions, because what you can do is you can imagine a personification of that particular emotion standing right in front of you and have a little conversation. Talk to them. Find out what it is that that emotion needs. Because the more you integrate and the more you are sort of making friends with those emotions, the more you can integrate those emotions and understand that, hey, yeah, I understand that my wounding has been triggered, but cool, I understand what I need now and I need to go give that to myself. And that is really important. Pay attention to the fact that I said, I am going to give that to myself. Not I'm going to go out and try to get that from somebody else. You are getting that solace and that comfort from yourself. Here's a real world example of that. There have been several times throughout my life, even in the recent past, where I have had friends compliment me. They either say, "Oh wow, your face looks so beautiful, your skin looks so clear," or "Your hair looks amazing," and "Oh my gosh, what did you do?" Things like that. Any sort of compliment like that. I instantly go to my wounding of, well, what do they mean? Did I look horrible before? Like what? Did my hair look awful before and now it looks better? Did my skin look horrible before and now looks better? Like I instantly go to that place of that negative self-talk. Now, this has nothing to do with the people who are actually saying the compliment to me. If I were able to receive that compliment in a healthy, I love myself kind of way, I would be able to simply say, thank you. Yes, I did something different with my hair today. Or yes, I found a new face cream. To be able to just receive that love coming from that other person without digging into the comment and looking for the negative in something that ultimately it doesn't exist. That negativity doesn't exist. It's something that I am looking for. So I really had to look within myself and say, okay, why is it that I cannot receive these compliments? Why is it that I am receiving these compliments and I'm basically taking them as an insult? Well, I had to look within and see where that came from. And when I dove down deep into that belief system, I realized that my childhood was kind of filled with these types of compliments. So I remember my sister dating this guy, and my sister is 4 years older than me. And this guy was really cute. I mean, wow, he was a very good looking guy. And I remember sitting on the hood of his car with him, waiting for my sister because they were going to go on a date that evening. And he looks at me and says to me, "You know, Annette, you would just be knockout gorgeous if you lost 10 pounds." And keep in mind, I was probably 13 at the time, 12 or 13, somewhere around there. You know, when you're in middle school, we're all awkward and weird looking and, it's not a fantastic time for most of us. And of course, I have had struggles with my weight my entire life. It's something that I've talked about openly. And quite frankly, I looked up to this guy because I saw him as sort of the stereotype of the type of guy that I would want to date when I got older. So I was actually really excited. I was like, oh, cool. I could be really beautiful if I just lost these 10 pounds. But see how I grabbed onto that? I grabbed onto that negativity that, oh, you would be beautiful if. Not you are beautiful, you would be beautiful if. So at that moment, I was like, cool, okay, if I just lose 10 pounds, I'll be beautiful. And I was never able to lose those 10 pounds. And in fact, as I got older, I gained more weight. As I got older, I lost weight, I gained weight. I've lost and gained countless pounds on this journey to finally love myself and to finally see that society or men or whoever else would see me as beautiful. And you can imagine the resentment that statement, that one statement created in me, because basically what he said was a caveat. And because I was not able to achieve that, I just basically said, oh, well, I guess that just means I'm not beautiful. And that particular wound was reiterated to me over and over and over again. I was teased at school. My father even made comments to me about my weight. My mother made comments to me about my weight. Various different people. It was all over the place. And the insane thing about it is when I look back at how much I weighed and what I looked like back then, I was maybe 10, 15 pounds overweight when I was that age. But I have to say, I was healthy. I was strong. I looked great. I was athletic. I mean, it's insane to me that this even was a subject matter that came across my energetic field. But clearly there was a reason for it. And why was it? It was because the universe was like, you need to take a look at this wound because it's not true. And I'm going to be completely honest. It's not a wound that is completely healed in me just yet. I have done a lot of work on it, but it's still just there. Occasionally, I will feel it pop up and I'm like, oh, okay, there it is. I see it again. So now, instead of me going deep into that either shame or deep into the sadness or feeling unworthy, at least I can stop myself from dipping into those lower energies and I can recognize it and say, oh, okay, so I'm here again. All right, cool. So what is it that I can do to then make sure I don't go into those lower energies about this story from this one person or from the several people that said this to me when I was a child? What is it that I can do to get rid of that belief system? So that is the biggest self-love practice you can do. And that is write down all of your belief systems. Write down all of them. And you're probably sitting here thinking, well, I don't understand. What do you mean by belief systems? It's about the way that you think about a certain thing. And you're not going to be able to write them all down all at once. It will come in waves. It'll come at various different times and places. So I would keep a running notebook of your belief systems. And then ask yourself, are these belief systems mine? Where did they come from? Did somebody just say this to me and I took it on as my own? Or is this something that I truly believe? This is the biggest act of self-love that you can do for yourself, is to extrapolate all of the crap that you have heard throughout your lifetime about yourself and start to recreate the image of who you are in your own eyes. There are many other nuanced ways in which you can show your self-love. This is going to be the last big one that we're going to talk about for this episode, and that is communication. Communicating what it is that you need, communicating what it is that you want, standing up for the things that you believe in that are your belief systems, and feeling confident enough in your own voice to speak your truth. Now, people talk about speaking your truth. It's a really big thing. People talk about it all the time. But you can't actually do it until you know what your truth is. When you do all of this introspective work, you do your shadow work, you do your work on belief systems, you start unraveling that negative self-talk, you start putting up those boundaries, you start doing all of these things. And then you can start practicing all of what you have learned with other people. So in that scenario that I just gave you where friends are complimenting me and I instantly go into my wounding, I can simply say to my friend, thank you so much for saying that. I just have to let you know that receiving compliments is something that I'm really working on. That in the past, compliments have made me uncomfortable, or I end up looking at the negativity in compliments. And I really appreciate you saying that to me. And I am here willing to receive that compliment. Now, of course, if this is a really good friend, they're going to understand that and they're going to think that that's really wonderful and they're going to support you. If this is an acquaintance friend, maybe that's not something that you will say. So it's about really gauging who you're speaking to, how much trust is there between the two of you. Can you really say the things that are truly in your heart? And that is about the discretion that you have in sharing your energy, sharing your own self-love with another person. Because we're not always going to share that love with another person. We're going to share it with the people that we do know and trust. And we can share it in small doses with strangers, with people we come across on a day-to-day basis. But it is about really protecting your energy in that way and making sure that you are sovereign in your own energy, that you are not allowing other people's energy to really have an effect or impede upon the work that you've already done. That doesn't mean avoidance. It doesn't mean you're avoiding everything that is unpleasant, because that is virtually impossible. What you need to do is be able to withstand those challenging situations and be able to still have that solid love within yourself, that confidence, that self-worth, all of those things that you work on within yourself, to be able to stand there and know exactly how to respond or to check out, to maybe walk away from a situation, or to maybe explain to the person where you happen to be in that moment in time. Because all of this self-love work, all of the things that we do in order to better ourselves, it's not to exist in a vacuum. It is to actually be out in the world, connecting with other people and being able to do it in an effective and loving way. Join me on TikTok or Instagram, where I am posting a whole bunch of videos regarding unconditional love, codependency, as well as self-love. And write down in the comments the ways in which you are looking at codependency in your life, or the way in which you are practicing self-love. I would love to hear from you.
I want to thank you for joining me today. And I look forward to walking this journey with you and pointing the way on your spiritual journey. If you are interested in learning more about me and the sessions that I do, feel free to go to my website at infinitesoullove.com.
On all social media, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube at Infinite Soul Love 1111.
Hey, and if you feel called, I would love it if you could rate The Heart of You on whatever streaming service you're using, whether it's Apple Podcasts or Spotify. Please take a moment, give it a review. It really does help the channel. Thanks so much.